So, Sreeram, look at the first speech which was delivered by Donald Trump. And I was thinking about the speech that was delivered by Barack Obama when he first became the president. The operative word which was used then was hope. It was described as the big campaign, the big election of hope. Here I am seeing that Donald Trump is talking about unification, rebuilding, almost suggesting we need to reclaim America. Let me put it this way before you. Who does America really need to be reclaimed from? Who is a real American? Is Donald Trump now trying to reignite that debate? Who is a real American? The blacks, the Asians, the Latinos, the Filipinos, all these are aside. The whites are the real Americans. Is that the message coming across through his speech today?
Bhupen, there is a culture war at the core of this election, and race is right up there central. The statistics clearly show that Trump aced the white votes, including college-educated white people, women who we would assume because of Trump's misogyny and sexism would be repelled. All of them, went for Trump, most in large proportions. So yes, who are we? That question has been triggered by Trump. The identity, making America great again. For many people, it's an atavistic thing. At a time when white supremacy was assured, to a time when it became multiracial, multicultural, multi-ethnic, as the Obama coalition that brought together all these disparate groups together. So now, in a way, it's like a throwback to the 90s. And what he's trying to do is taking it backwards in a cultural sense, but on the other hand is in a way giving those who felt disenfranchised and disillusioned and left out of the system, the small men and women as he talks, he champions, and giving them, he's saying, a chance to bounce back and hit back at their former oppressors.
Is that, Bacha, isn't that again a similarity which one can spot between Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump? Let me get to the specifics of the business side to it. Now, Sreeram, the truth is that out of 2 H-1B visa applications which are filed in America on an annual basis, an overwhelming majority, almost 1.5 lakhs, are Indians. Now, when Donald Trump in his first speech says, we need to reclaim America, we will rebuild America, this 1.5 lakh Indian community, which also believes in the great American dream, do they need to start re-strategizing? Is there a threat to the number of Indians in America?
Well, Trump has been largely ranting against Hispanic migrants because he perceived them to be politically hostile to him and that they would vote for Clinton in the election. Unfortunately for Clinton, not many of the Latinos did turn up and helped her at the end. But nonetheless, and then he has, spoken about the Syrians and to some extent Arab extremists sneaking in as refugees.
He went on record.
Will have a ban on Muslims.
That he'll have a ban on Muslims entering America.
But interestingly, on Indian Americans, he's sounded a lot more conciliatory and
he wished us
welcoming.
Happy Diwali.
Yeah.
And he described Modi as a great Hindu leader.
Yeah. So, to some extent, I don't think there's going to be a crackdown on our H-1Bs or on the large Indian American diaspora in the US, 3 million plus. Rather, of course, I think a majority of Indian Americans did support Hillary Clinton as per the opinion polls. But now the polls have all been discredited because they all were predicting a Clinton win anyway. So we don't know, 21 to 22% of non-white voters, including Asians and Indians in the US, did vote for Trump today.
Some analysts are saying that this is nothing else but whitelash. Is this race and global capital mixed together? Crisis of global capital? Yeah,
C.L.R. James, one of the great Caribbean intellectuals, said that the question of race cannot be separated from the question of class. So what has happened is, yes, white working class, overwhelmingly for Trump, even educated white people, nearly 50% of them, college-educated, did vote for Trump.
That's
this is surprising because earlier it was said that Clinton would capture the educated voters because Trump was devoid of content and was empty.
Again,
the Indian Americans did support Trump specifically for this reason because he brought back this notion of the American dream, the Horatio Alger myth, that from the bottom up, you pull yourself and you make it big in America. It's a land of opportunity. Businesses, he tried to appeal to small businesses and tried to project Clinton as a, puppet of Wall Street, which is somewhat true. There is a counterpoint to this, which is that the projections of economic recovery...
Factualism versus perception.
No, but even at the level of facts, the projection of economic recovery by the Obama administration has been hyped.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at the people who don't report whether they have stopped searching for work, and if you count all these communities which have just stopped looking for any jobs, then actually the unemployment rate is much higher.
So let me
if you
take
look
a
at
break.
wage inequality, if you look at the perception, the gap of opportunities that are not available to everybody, this divide between the urban and rural, which you see clearly in the voting today.
So Sreeram, is there any similarity? If I'm looking for similarity, say, between the last Republican president, George Bush, and now Donald Trump, do you see any similarities between these two?
Well, there is
At least as far as the Indian context is concerned.
Actually, George Bush was an establishment, traditional Republican, and Trump is complete iconoclastic Republican. So there is a difference in foreign policy attitude. Trump has expressed more isolationist tendencies. George Bush was more interventionist. And George Bush was the first one who recognized India's value in a geopolitical sense as a counterweight to China and tried to take us along. And that's how the civil nuclear deal happened.
Well, let's look at it this
But
way.
with Trump, it's different because Trump is looking more at the world as a businessman. So I am going to be actually keeping my eye on tripling, quadrupling, quintupling our bilateral trade and investment. I think that's where there's greater traction, because on defense and military and on geopolitics, it looks like Trump is not going to be pushing hard at China, and that's not good news for us. But on the other hand, there's good news for us in terms of Trump as a deal maker and Modi as a CEO, Prime Minister. I think the two will hit it off. If we had Obama earlier, the combination of Modi and Obama, we can look at some formulation called More Trump or whatever. It's going to be an express.
Yes,
Smart cities, maybe we can build together.
So if you look at Brexit, and the nearest comparable example that we have to what Trump has done in the US is Brexit, right? The markets tanked. The last time the Sensex fell this much was on the day after Brexit, and the popular wisdom was it's because of economic reasons. There's a silent white majority which is upset with immigrants, which is upset with all these jobs going away to India and to China, and it's basically a white lash back at the browning of Britain or the browning of America. You think it's more that, or it's more the anti-terror, anti-Muslim stuff?
It's a mix of the two. Economic depression creates all kinds of cultural anxieties. People want to go back to primal identities and then ask the basic question, what happened to white America? How could we have lost it? We need to regain it and make white America great again, or take us back to an earlier era. So that is there. But you see, Brexit is also a vote against globalization and the way it was going. Free movement of people, trade related losses. So the same phenomenon has now occurred again.
Yeah, basically he's saying that he's going to tear up all the free trade agreements, NAFTA,
the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Transatlantic, everything is up in the air now. So I think that's why the markets are tanking, because they expected Clinton to win and for continuity. But now it's like this is like a complete break from the past. It's a revolution, a conservative grassroots revolution that is going to shake up the Western world.
So this year, 2017, this coming year, you're going to see elections in France, where everybody says Marine Le Pen is going to do well. You're going to see elections in Germany. You're going to see elections in the Netherlands. So you have a changed global landscape.
Well, Zaka, the nearest historical parallel is the decade after the Great Depression, because although the economic crisis of 2008 was somewhat contained, its after effects are still lingering.
Okay.
So what you have here is a move towards fascist or semi-fascist or towards this kind of populist right, which combines class anxieties but at the same time mobilizes white supremacy. This is what you saw with the rise of in Italy and in Germany in the 1930s. And I hope America sufficiently still has a liberal overall framework, institutions that can contain this, because some of the rhetoric of Trump unfortunately has been so vitriolic and so against minorities. There could be civil war on the streets. He has sounded presidential.
But here's the
we have to give credit to Trump for exposing the ugly underbelly of American capitalism and the excessive concentration of ownership in the media, which has always been the critique of the left. So what the Marxists like Bernie Sanders were saying, Trump appropriated. Hillary Clinton, so-called candidate on the left could not, and she actually turned out to be more right than Trump, and it ended up on the losing side.
No, but he's effectively used new media to build up these echo chambers of supporters.
He sees this as an insurgency to try and strike back at the established order, which is totally biased against him. And for a lot of small-town Americans, for a lot of out-of-work Americans, this resonates because they're saying there is a big conspiracy out there against to put us down. And there's this one man, Lone Ranger, who's fighting against this entire system, and we're going to root for him come what may. It's a kind of a defiance or a protest vote, and it's worked. I want to add one point, which is Angela Merkel, who's herself facing a big election next year, has said that we are living in a post-facts world, where these emotions and sentiments can be worked around. So all the statistics and all the big data and all the so-called ground game and all these failed for Clinton, because on the other side was this so-called folksy hero who's a billionaire and who represents the American dream, and he wants to spread it out and make everybody billionaires or rich. And suddenly it has resonated because people are saying, the establishment didn't do it for us. Let's give it, an outsider a chance.